My name is Anthony Mbuthia. I was born in Kenya. There's actually a few people on a corner that had a machete, and they asked me, they were like, if I want to die, then I better continue how I'm going. One of the best ways to heal is forgiveness. Our family decided that we should go hide in a church where everybody else was hiding. So even when I think about some of these things, like how I got out the church as the last person, how I got on the pickup truck as the last person, I'm always like, it's got to be God. It's got to be something bigger than me. Almost every day I was having surgery. Close to 100 surgeries is what I've had. What do you mean what? I just told you what. But I didn't know that there was a language barrier. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start learning English by repeating the same way they pronounce something. I would actually say that God has put people in my life that kind of show me what I'm supposed to be doing. I wouldn't be here, first of all, if it wasn't for God, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the people He's put. I feel like I'm very fortunate to have love like in my life.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Vibe with Humanity podcast, a show bent on spreading positivity and promoting empathy by showcasing people's inspiring stories. I'm your host, Trevor. Tonight's guest is Anthony Mbuthia. Anthony's an immigrant from Kenya. He's a YouTuber. He's a podcaster. He's a professional videographer, a professional photographer, and he's an author of this book right here, Triumph Over Adversity, a story of turning pain into success. So this is an autobiographical book focused on a time period of 2007-2008 where there was a huge clash and turmoil between two political parties after an election. 1,300 people died, billions of dollars of damages incurred, and there was a notable event that happened during that time called the Kiambaa Church Massacre, where almost 40 people were killed. Anthony's one of 4 survivors. So Anthony's here tonight to tell us some of his story and also talk about his mindset on how he looks back on that and how he manages that memory today and how he got through it. Anthony, welcome to the show. I thank you so much for being here.
Wow, thank you, Trevor. I have to say, you did good, man. You did your homework. You did, some of those things. I didn't tell you anything. You did that by yourself. So I appreciate you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I wrote this book is because I wanted to push out forgiveness. First of all, if somebody has done something to you, you've gone through a lot of trauma. One of the best ways to heal is forgiveness, like forgiving somebody. But then even if you're going through something that maybe doesn't have to do with forgiveness, you just have low self-esteem or you don't think you're beautiful or anything like that, I would like to just say to that person, they should not internalize those things that they're going through. Don't allow those things to become their identity. My name is Anthony Mbuthia. I grew up in Kenya. I was born in Kenya. Grew up until I was 11, and during the 2007-2008 post-election violence in Kenya, we had 2 candidates that were vying for president, and then one guy won, and the other guy just said, "I don't believe that was legit. It was rigged," and that caused kind of like fights that broke out throughout the whole nation of Kenya, and people died, and I am one of the few people that or one of the people that were affected by that. And the same thing with my family. But after the elections, they announced they said that the guy that was winning, and then there was riots started happening now all over the country. Our family decided that we should go and hide in a church where everybody else was hiding.
Yeah.
And by everybody, I mean like the people in the village were also hiding because we just didn't know who was going to get attacked and where and why.
Were they in the village before you? Did you see them and ran to the church, or did you go to the church to be proactive?
Right. So we went to the church the night before the incident happened.
Okay.
So we went on the 31st, and I remember like my aunt making me wear like a bunch of clothes and all that, but I didn't know why. I thought we were just going to go there and come back just the same way we probably did the night before, but we're just going there because it's safer. But then we actually ended up going there with like the rest of the family, a bunch of other people. People were bringing mattresses. People brought bicycles. People brought like cooking pots and all that stuff. And then I think around that time when people were bringing mattresses, that's when I kind of knew like I think we're staying here. And then around like noontime or 11, sometime like that, the women were cooking and everything like that. And then so we started coming back towards the church. And now we were playing inside the church or, just making jokes and all that stuff. And then we heard rocks being thrown at the church. And at the time, I didn't know it was rocks. It's just, it's an iron sheet on top of the building. And then you could hear it seems like rocks that were being thrown. And then when we went outside, that's when it was like, dang, there's actually rocks being thrown. and now this is the first
Could
time.
you see the people throwing them at that time?
Yeah, at that
How
time.
far were they from
Because it was kind of far, but not super far. And when I saw them, I went back inside the church because there was people painted with like their faces painted, machetes, and just charging towards the church, you know. And once I saw that, and they were throwing rocks, they're like, whatever. And then a bunch of other people came inside the church too, myself and.
So you immediately recognized, okay, that's severe danger.
Yeah, it's scary. Like my
Yeah.
intuition was like, this is not good.
Yeah.
You need to go back inside the church. Went inside, and then everybody else was coming in. At the same time, people were screaming. They're like, oh, like it was crazy. Went back inside the church, and then I was with my siblings at the time. But this is where we got separated now, because at that time I didn't know where they went. Like I was inside the church, and then other people came, and it was like packed to where I couldn't move around. And I'm 11, so I'm young.
Yeah.
And then now it's older people too, women in there. The man, I believe, went to also face them and go towards them, but I didn't see any of that. This is some of the things that I found out later on. Once we got inside the church, they locked. We had these two main doors that open up.
Mm-hmm.
They locked those doors, and then they put the people.
The people attacking from,
the people
the
attacking,
outside?
correct.
Oh.
Yeah, they locked it, and the church was made out of like there was wood around it, like around the church. So they locked it, and then they put people's bikes on the main doors, so you couldn't open the doors. And then on the sides, they took the mattresses that I mentioned people brought, and then they like pretty much placed them around the church, and then they put gas, kerosene, and then they lit it on fire. And then I just remember people screaming. At first, I didn't even see the fire. It was just like people screaming, and then that's when they said that the church had been put on, like set on fire. And then now it's like everybody's trying to get out. But remember, the main doors where we come from, they're locked, so we can't even get out. They had some windows. Some of them were open, so people were able to jump out outside the windows. But by the time I was getting out, or it was like towards the end, and I think that's why I was burnt. Most of them, like I was one of the people that was badly burned. It was a few of us that were burned. So 4, including myself, and then there was an older lady too that was badly burned. And so for me, I came outside the church towards the end of the fire, and the reason like my hands got burnt and none of my other sides is because things were falling off now by the time I was leaving, so I was protecting myself from the fire, and that's why my head got burned, because things were just falling off, and everything was hot, and I'm trying to make my way, and at some point it was like I'm trying to make my way, and people are stepping over me, people are trying to get out and whatnot. So by the time I got outside the church, I was one of the last people.
And so you got outside, and then realized you were burned at that point?
No, I didn't know I was burned. So I got outside. Now this one I'm seeing dead people on the ground. Some of them are covered with like the lesos. They're kind of like blankets that were there, And then I'm walking outside the church, and at this point I'm not even like scared of people being dead. I'm not. The way I would describe the feeling is like, think of like if a bomb dropped or something, and then that even in movies when you watch and you can't even like hear, or you're just like, what's going on? That's the type of feeling I had going on like the whole time as I was walking. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Walking outside, and then once I got outside the church premises, I was trying to go back to my grandma's house because I didn't know where else to go. Like at this time, people had already left. Like most of the people that were fleeing had already like left, so I couldn't see anybody on the way. And then I was trying to go up to my grandma's house. That's when I met a guy. It's actually a few people on a corner that had a machete, and they asked me. They were like, if I want to die, then I better continue how I'm going. And this was in Swahili.
As in back to your grandma's?
Yeah, back to my grandma's house. But if I want to live, then I better follow everybody else. And it's not like you better. It's like they're telling me that's what you should do. At that time, my skin was still fine. Like nothing had fallen off. No scars came. It was just like, think about when you're burning or you're cooking, or you're cooking something from the inside to where the skin still is on top. Like it still looks good, but the inside is pretty badly burned. And
so it's a deep burn.
Exactly, because 3rd degree, like you're really pushing it, and it's like deep tissue. So walked all the way. It was like, I think I don't know what it is in miles, but less than 2 miles, or about 2 miles to get to the main road. Once I got there, that's when I saw my grandma. As with everybody else walking, she saw me. She started screaming. She was trying to come hug me. I believe that's what it was, because she was coming towards me. A bunch of women grabbed her. She fell. And then there was a guy with a I would say it was a good Samaritan, like a guy with a pickup truck that was picking people up to go to the hospital, and I was the last person to get on that pickup truck. So even when I think about some of these things, like how I got out the church as the last person, how I got on the pickup truck as the last person, I'm always like, it's got to be God. It's got to be something bigger than me. So I stayed in the hospital, and at this point, I didn't know I was burned. But as I was just there sitting, waiting, I just kept like nodding my head and hitting the wall. And then that's when I smelled like, it smells like something burnt, like, you know. And that's when I turned back and I looked at it, and I could see like some of my hair like stuck on the wall. And that's when I was like, oh man, that's me. Like, I'm burnt. Like,
Did it register how bad that was
No,
at the time, or were you still kind of in shock?
Still in shock. Even when I looked at it, I just said, and I kept going like this. Like, I just kept doing this. But in my head, that's when I was thinking. I was like, that's me. Like, that's my scars. I'm burnt. Like, I mean, that's my head, my hair that's there. The next day, my face had started to swell. So it was like everything was swollen. I couldn't see. I could only hear. Everything was in pain. Now the pain started kicking in. You know.
And that was the
11 years
second
old.
day?
Yeah. Woke up. Now I'm in pain. Like, I'm just, my head hurts. My hands hurt. Everything just hurts. And then they were giving me meds and everything. My mom came. When she came in, I didn't even know. Like, I didn't even see her because I couldn't see. And that the eyesight thing lasted for like almost 5 days. It was like a week type of thing because I had it like the swelling had to come down.
One thing that blew me away from reading about that is when your eyes were swollen shut, there was people in the hospital that was from the same party from that the attackers were from, taking care of you. So you had to sit there and you couldn't see, and you were also wondering am I going to get attacked?
Right. Yeah. So same tribe. And I was asking my dad, like, why are we here with these people after they try to kill me? You know, why? And then my dad was like talking to them. And at that time, I didn't know what they were conversing about, but I was like, why are you talking to these people? And they just tried to kill us. That's how it was at the hospital. I was scared. Even every time he would leave and maybe go watch the news or something like that, I was scared. Like, what if they come and like finish me or anything like that? Almost every day I was having surgery. Sometimes they would cancel the surgery, so I started losing a lot of weight because I would be scheduled to have surgery today, and then they would postpone the surgery and say I'm gonna have it in the evening. And you know, when you're having surgery, you can't eat past the midnight before. So as soon as it's midnight, you can't eat if you're having surgery. The next
so
day.
Then when it would get pushed, you had to continue fasting.
Exactly, till like late evening, only for them to come and be like, "Oh, this doctor is busy today. You're not having surgery. You know, it's tomorrow." So maybe I would have one meal, and then now after midnight, I can't eat again and go through the same thing. But I spent 3 months in the first hospital, and then I spent 7 months in the second hospital, and it was all, I never left. Like, it was just throughout the whole time that I was there. And it was surgery after surgery. I've had about 24 surgeries here in the hospital, because I did ask at some point, and I believe in Kenya it has to be over 50. It was like close to 100 surgeries is what I've had, because it was in the first hospital. I was in and out every time. They were washing me. They would go clean my head and everything like that. Yeah.
Man, so your mom got over here. You got to live with her. The surgery stopped at some point, and you healed. And what was that like to get into America and live here?
Yeah, so first of all, coming to America was a whole story by itself too, because as much as I say I was learning English, I didn't really know English. Like, I didn't really know how to even if you say I knew English, like, I don't really know how to pronounce words. I don't know how to say certain things. So the way I was shocked by, you know, when people would talk to me, it was always like, whoa, what did you say? What did you say?
Slow down,
like,
please?
you know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And then it would get tiring, because you'd always be like, what? Say, pardon? Excuse me? Like, those are the things that, like, I knew. So I used to say that a lot. And then it was the same way for me. Like, they would be like, what? And then it was always like, they would just look at you like, what? And then it's like, bro, I just said, like, what do you mean what? I just told you what. But I didn't know that there was a language barrier. I didn't even know there was like, it didn't hit me at the time. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to start learning English by repeating the same way they pronounce something. So in school, because I came here like towards the end of 5th grade, and I spent I did like 2 months of 5th grade. I would just copy whatever, like if you said hello to me, like I would just start saying hello. And then like the way you pronounce certain words, how are you, Anthony? And I'd be like, oh, my name is pronounced Anthony, not Anthony. You know, for me, it'd be like Anthony. So even that, they used to make fun of that. Like, kids would be like, Anthony, Like they would make little funny sounds like where I come from, but that's not
Like
even
bullying?
that's a South African thing. Yeah, but at the time I didn't even know it was bullying because I am coming here for the first time, so having to understand the language is like one thing. Now I gotta understand like what bullying is, because fast forward, even when I went to middle school, we would watch movies after school program movies. That's when I found out some of the things that they used to say to me earlier on were bullying. Like for example, they would call me Freddy Krueger. You know who that is, right?
Yeah.
From Nightmare on Elm Street, and then they would call me Two-Face from the Batman movie, and then they would just laugh, but I never could laugh because it would just be like, what? Like I don't know what it is that they're talking about until when I watched that movie at after school program. And that's when I was like, oh shoot, that's who they've been saying like this whole time. That's me. But at that time, I didn't really get offended because I've always had humor like growing up. So even by the time it hit me, I just laughed it off and I was like, that's kind of funny. But yeah, I experienced bullying when I came here. Kids used to take off my beanie and they would run with it. They would ask me if, oh my God, are you hiding your brain under your head? They would ask me if I get like disability checks or something like that. Or if I get like, when I go on the buses, do they let me in for free? And I never really understood that. And that's later on is when I came to understand a lot of things like, if you're disabled, you probably get like a government check, monthly. You probably get like, they let you get the bus pass for free, or there's some certain perks. But at the time, I never really understood like what some of those things were. But when I did understand that they were bullying me is when they would take off my beanie and say certain things.
Yeah.
That's when I started also saying things back at them, and they wouldn't like that. And then I used to, back in 8th grade, one of my friends used to beatbox like a lot, and then I used to just like say funny things, and then they would like laugh like during lunchtime. I don't remember now what I used to say, but I would just say things. So I started becoming friends with some of the kids that I guess were the cool kids at school, and that kind of helped me get outside, like not being bullied, but now being part of with the bullies, but not really bullying other people, but being safe from them bullying me because I was hanging out with them.
Do you think that you've found or are on the road to finding your purpose?
Yeah, I think definitely on the road. And I would actually say that God has put people in my life that kind of show me what I'm supposed to be doing. Because I always say like, I wouldn't be here, first of all, if it wasn't for God, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the people he's put. I feel like I'm very fortunate to have love like in my life, people that love me, people that want to see me win, older people, mentorship and all that. Like I've had a lot of that growing up. Like there's no stage every stage that I could think of, I had somebody or some people, even when I didn't have a father figure growing up for a while because my dad was in Kenya because of he wasn't allowed or able to come to the U.S. until after we got, we filed for asylum, and that took, like, I didn't see my mom, my dad, and my siblings for like 6 years. So
Wow.
Just looking back,
especially at that age, like in your teens, that
right,
must have been tough. Do you still get images and flashes and memories from times on things you don't want to think about? And if you do, how do you handle that if you're comfortable answering?
Nowadays, the only thing that scares me is the fact that, like, think of like PTSD. So I'm always thinking like, what if at one point as I get older, I start like losing it, you know what I mean? Like without knowing, like where I'm just like, I barely remember things, or I'm acting a certain way, but I don't even know because of how much trauma I've gone through. What if something happens in my life at one point and it triggers all those things? Maybe I feel like I've healed, but they're somewhere in my body and they start coming up. So that does scare me. That frightens me. But at the end of the day, I try not to worry about it. I trust in God. I believe in God. So I'm almost like, if God allows it to be, then it is what it is. But I don't see why a God that I trust in would do something like that.
I don't either, man. Thank you for sharing all this. I really appreciate it. Guys, the book, as amazing as that was, there is so much more in here, and so much more in the mindset and how he handled it mentally, and so many more details. Don't sleep on that book, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Trevor, for having me, man. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man.